Good morning. I'm Ernst van Zyl, Head of Public Relations at AfriForum. And today we are publishing the World Must Know report. And as Kali correctly stated, this is not the first report of this kind. In 2020, we released a similar report documenting many decades of the persecution of minorities in South Africa. And then in 2022, we released another one. And now in 2023 is our latest one. And in the future, we will continue to release these types of reports, seeing as there's so much denialism from the government and many of its allies regarding the issues contained in this report. Just this week, or in the past 7 days, we've had the South African government's official X account on social media stating that there are no racially discriminatory laws in South Africa, which is just a blatant lie. We've had the president of South Africa claiming in the past that there are no murdering of farmers or white farmers in South Africa, his words, direct quote. And we've had many government officials denying the policies that they are enacting exist, or that the policies that they are enacting are discriminatory in any way, even though it can be proven that they are discriminatory. We've seen in the past 7 days as well desperate censorship attempts from the government, tearing down banners that expose uncomfortable truths about the government's race laws, such as we saw with Solidarity's banner being torn down in Johannesburg. And this is not the first desperate attempt to cover up the truth by the government. And as the saying goes, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And 2025 has definitely been a year where decades have happened. Unfortunately, one of those happenings has been a serious diplomatic crisis developing and escalating in South Africa between the South African government and the Trump administration. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that this is probably the most serious diplomatic crisis in South Africa post-1994. And it keeps worsening, thanks to the ANC-led government's reckless behavior, continued reckless behavior, and denialism. And in 2025, a bright spotlight was shone on inconvenient truths about South Africa on the international stage. And it continues to be shone through reports like this, through different reporting on what's happening in South Africa, through alternative media, through those brave enough to speak out, despite the government's best efforts. And the reaction in 2025 from most international observers to what they saw being revealed in South Africa was shock, outrage, and disgust. There was nowhere for the ANC-led government and its allies to hide. And except the only real place where they could hide was to desperately and baselessly claim that all these revelations about what's happening under their watch is quote-unquote misinformation. They never give any examples or proof that it is misinformation, just simply that you have to take their word for it, that it's misinformation. The only problem was they had to try and convince the international observers and those on the outside looking in that they should not believe their lying eyes. A challenging thing to try and do. And on the other hand, it's one thing to try and challenge Donald Trump in regards to the international stage. It's a whole different ballgame to try and challenge and take on reality itself, telling people to not believe what they're seeing and what they're hearing, that they can clearly see to be the truth. In 2025, reality did quite a lot of bullying of those who try to deny reality. It is within this context of increasing international pressure on the ANC and the South African government that AfriForum compiled yet another detailed, meticulously sourced The World Must Know report. This report, like previous reports of the same name, documents in detail how Afrikaners and other minorities in South Africa are being targeted, attacked, scapegoated, excluded, and discriminated against in South Africa, chiefly by the government. Every claim made in this report is backed up by at least one source. So the desperate accusations of misinformation are not going to stick. If we want to determine which country's government is the most race-obsessed or which country is the most race-regulated in the world, the number of race-based laws a government has on the books is a good measurement. The ANC-led South African government has over 145 such racist laws. I reckon it's therefore fair to give the South African government the title of the most race-mad on earth. Think that is a bit harsh? Well, look at section 1 of AfriForum's report, as it documents in detail the government's most race-mad policies and rhetoric just in 2025. Section 2 of the report unpacks how private property rights are under serious threat in South Africa by a political party in charge that does not see Zimbabwean dictator Robert Mugabe's land grabs as wrong and destructive, but rather sees it as a fundamentally good idea with some minor flaws in its implementation that need to be ironed out. Section 3 of the report discusses the matter of human rights abuses in South Africa by policies enacted by the government. One of the most politically inconvenient facts about South Africa of the past few years has been the steady deterioration of the human rights situation in the country, specifically for minority groups. To keep the report from becoming the length of a novel, it only sticks to documenting the period of 2025 regarding this matter. Section 4 documents the kill the Boer, kill the farmer chant and anti-minority rhetoric happening in South Africa in 2025. What is the purest expression of hatred towards a group of people? Well, I would say calling for their brutal murder based on their identity. Secondly, blaming every single problem caused by you, the government, on them. Both are happening to Afrikaners and other minority groups in South Africa. Heinrich Heine wrote, "Where they burn books, they will ultimately burn people too." And I reckon the same logic applies to statues, monuments, and even language. Those who attack statues will also attack the people those statues represent. Those who seek to destroy a language are ultimately seeking to destroy a people. Therefore, Section 5 and Section 6 of AfriForum's report documents the attacks on minority language, heritage, monuments, and statues in 2025. The ANC and its allies keep talking about misinformation regarding farm murders and racist laws being spread internationally by organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity. If these were in fact just baseless lies, they'd calmly refute them by presenting the truth as a counter. If AfriForum was lying, you could simply present the truth and AfriForum would be humiliated on the international stage. But that's not what the South African government has done. That's not been their response at all. The response from the ANC-led South African government has been simply screaming about misinformation without evidence, tearing down banners that were put up legally, and even a treason investigation into AfriForum and Solidarity. Now I must ask you, is that the behavior of someone who knows that they have truth on their side? No, that is the behavior of someone trying to cover up the fact that they do not have truth on their side. And I want to use this opportunity to address the ANC cadre or cadres who I know are listening in to AfriForum's different media conferences and videos. Your response has been to AfriForum and Solidarity has been this hysterical and desperate because AfriForum and Solidarity are in fact speaking the truth and you know it. That's the only conclusion to be taken from how you've reacted to how AfriForum and Solidarity are exposing what's happening in South Africa. AfriForum's report demonstrates how the human rights situation in South Africa, especially regarding minority rights, has continued to deteriorate in 2025. The South African government's racially discriminatory policies are increasing in number and severity. Private property rights are increasingly under threat. Incitement of violence and hatred against minority groups from powerful politicians is escalating. Critics of the government are subject to intimidation, censorship, and investigation. And minority heritage and education are being targeted, attacked, and marginalized. It has become imperative that all individuals, countries, organizations, and institutions in South Africa and abroad that stand for human rights, in particular minority rights, take a firm stand against the South African government for its discriminatory policies, attacks on private property rights, and for the hateful, violent rhetoric against minorities that is flourishing under its watch. Incitement of violence that the president to this day refuses to condemn in any way. AfriForum's new The World Must Know report can be found at www.theworldmustknow.co.za, and you can help AfriForum get the truth out about South Africa by downloading the report, reading it, and also sharing it, as well as sharing this presentation and conference. You can also strengthen our efforts by becoming a member by going to our website. Soon, AfriForum will be heading to the United Nations as well to present the findings of our report, as well as to spread it among influential organizations, individuals, and institutions in Europe. We will be taking copies of our Malema dossier along, as well as also another substantiating document. And with all these revelations, with all the documents that AfriForum has published, with all the claims we make, I just want to remind people, as always, to not just believe blindly what we say, research what we say, and you'll see where the truth in the end is to be found. Thank you very much for your time. And Kalikro has some final thoughts as well before we go to questions.
Yeah.